Hey everyone, and welcome to another Risky Business product demo. My name's Patrick Gray. In these product demos, we get one of our sponsors onto a video to basically do a show and tell, give us a run through of what their product does, who uses it, talk about it, show off the features, so on and so forth. And today, we're going to be walking through a demo of Resourcely with the founder of the company, Travis McPeak. And what Resourcely does is really around Terraform and making Terraform kind of easy, because anyone who is a heavy Terraform user understands that things can get a little bit out of control pretty quickly. So Resourcely was a company that was really founded to take care of those sorts of issues. Now, we are going to talk to Travis in a minute, but before then, we're going to speak with an expert in infrastructure security, Paul Friedman. He joins us in a personal capacity, but he works, his day job is at Block or Square. I think they changed the name, didn't they, Paul?
Yeah, it's Block now. So yeah, Block owns
It's Block,
Square.
but it was Square.
It was Square.
Yeah, okay,
Square
right.
one of our BUs within Block, right?
Yeah, it got confusing for me because there was at one time there were the names Block, Square, and Stripe, all kind of moving around at once. So thanks for clearing that up. So Paul, your day job is in infrastructure security, and you wanted to join us to just sort of have a bit of a chat about, I guess, this emerging product ecosystem designed for people who are, grappling with infrastructure as code. Did I get that about right?
You got it pretty close, and I'll just preface that legal is going to make me say I'm here on my own behalf. I don't want to go to jail. I'm vegetarian. There's probably terrible food, so I'll just throw it out there. Everything I say today is from my own opinion. And yes, I lead the infrastructure security organization here at Block, and I think historically strategies have been around cloud security posture management, right? Finding the bad things and then spamming the life out of people to fix them. And as you could imagine, that doesn't work at scale. And it also is a great way to get your engineering teams to hate you. And so I'm incredibly passionate about the preventative controls in the world of paved roads, and asking big engineering orgs to all adopt Terraform and become Terraform masters also doesn't scale, and also gets people to hate you. And so that's why I'm here. I'm here to talk about that a little bit. I'm excited to see the industry moving more towards really the paved road approach that has good baked in, rather than you've done something bad and I'm going to kill you with tickets.
Yeah, ticket spam. It's interesting actually when I think about Resourcely and what it does. There are kind of some parallels there around, well, less so what Resourcely does, but when you think about your big CSPM platforms, which, as you point out, just tend to generate ticket spam, it kind of reminds me of like orgs that are doing vuln management badly, right? Because that's the approach, which is, you generate a ticket, job done. But that's not really how it works, right? Like if you're relying on systems that generate remediation tickets, you're kind of in the wrong place. And I guess this is to be expected when we move towards infrastructure as code, and then we don't really bother setting up systems to manage that code, which is it's kind of the situation we find ourselves in now, right?
It is, and it's the norm in most places, unfortunately. And I don't want to completely poo-poo CSPM. It's an incredibly important part of our sort of security stack, right? We need that functionality, but if we can, it takes longer, it's a bigger investment, but if you can partner with your engineering teams and figure out where are all of these misconfigs coming from, where are all of these security risks coming from, and how do we pave those roads? How do we build Terraform modules? How do we make them available to our engineers? How do we make them configurable in a way that doesn't push the engineering burden? Like our engineers should be product engineers focusing on shipping great features to our customers and making our stock price go higher, right? I don't want every engineer to be a cloud security expert and an infrastructure as code expert.
Yeah, I mean, you want your CSPN to be finding edge cases, not just stuff that's happening 5 times a day. I mean, I think really that's what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it shouldn't be your primary way of doing engineering right, is to catch the problems after they've been deployed.
Totally. And you need organizational support for that, right? There are some places where that's the best security can do. And I've got all
Yeah.
the empathy in the world for that. And I'm very grateful that here at Block we have a lot of alignment with our engineering counterparts around doing the right thing, even if it takes longer, right? But it's a better experience for our engineers, and then it's just better outcomes for the company as well.
So I guess, I mean, you're really here to talk just in general terms about how, we do just generally need better tooling around this stuff. And we need to move beyond just saying, yes, we've got infrastructure as a code, and then just, allowing everyone to go ad hoc with it. I mean, to sum up, that's what you're saying.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I don't know how much time you've spent with Terraform, but it is not fun, right? So it's a step in the right direction, right? But we should really be providing, sort of paved roads with guardrails in there for our engineers using Terraform in a way of sort of managing that all at scale. It's not easy to do. Lots of folks have tried to build stuff in-house. Some of it has worked, some of it has not. But really just I'm challenging the sort of mentality that we have a CSPM, we've checked that box, we spam the life out of people about things that are wrong, and we don't really prioritize, the partnership with the engineering orgs around making those things right and not being reactive to the whole strategy, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, Paul Friedman, thank you so much for joining us to help us introduce this product demo. A pleasure to meet you, and we'll catch you around.
Big fan. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Travis.
Okay, now we're going to chat with Travis McPeak, who is the founder and CEO of Resourcely, and he's going to walk us through the product. Travis, how's it going?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah,
it's good to be here.
Good. All right, so I believe you want to just walk us through a quick deck about the product before you do the actual demo. So let's rip into it.
Perfect. Yeah, to set some context, the reason that we exist is we want to make it easy for developers to go back to writing software, not having to worry about security and cloud configuration and all of these complex things, but actually let them move faster while they're doing it. So anytime security comes and says, you have to do this new series of steps before you can get your job done, that's why developers hate the security team. We're always making life slower and harder for them. The goal is how can we get a win-win? How can we make developers faster and give them security for free without them having to become security experts? So kind of state of where we've gotten today. We've gone through this DevSecOps movement. I think there's some really good parts of that. The downside of it is basically security realized at some point that they don't scale anymore. And they basically ran all these scanners and said, all right, here's vulnerabilities, like you go fix them to developers. And the issue is that's not what good partners do. If you hung out with somebody and every time they met you, they were asking you to go do some work and telling you that you screwed things up, you wouldn't want to be friends with them anymore. This is the same way that we've treated developers for a long time in security. And it's why many developers will avoid the security team. But fortunately, there's a better way of handling things. What we really want to do is basically make it dead simple for a developer that's not a security expert to go and get what they need done and get back to development. And just training alone is not going to solve it. I think that's been our default answer for a long time is we'll teach developers about all of the types of cross-site scripting and how SQL injection works and all of these things. And it really doesn't scale. Developers will take the training. They'll promptly forget a lot of these things because they don't deal with it day in and day out. They really shouldn't have to deal with it. What this leads to are a couple of things. Basically, misconfiguration. If you've been watching the news, you've probably seen a whole bunch of companies almost every day now. There's a lot of cloud misconfiguration caused some breach. Your data is now on the internet. Go get credit monitoring. This is not what we want. So average cost of a data breach, $9.5 million. Nobody wants to be the security team that's under the gun here because this happened. And there's a lot of ops pain just in supporting developers. So security will come and help a developer get their security group set up correctly, get their IAM role set up correctly, get networking set up, make sure that things are tagged. And this is a lot of wasted time, both for the developers and for the teams that have to support them, like security, platform engineering, infrastructure engineering, and folks like that. And so really what Resourcely does, it stops misconfiguration from making it to production. You don't have to go scan and find that it was done incorrectly. We do this with two ways. One is a guardrail. So a guardrail is really some expert opinion that a security team has about how they want their infrastructure to be configured. All of the common foot guns, like don't put things on the internet unless it goes through a review process, those would be guardrails. Will also help folks just select the right properties. I think when you talk about cloud infrastructure, it's inherently complex. For example, an S3 bucket, the most basic resource you can think of in Amazon, has 70 properties. Like really nobody knows how to set all of these properties. Developers don't stand a chance. So what we're going to do is actually help them pick the correct setting for your organization, for securities concerns, for cost management, for reliability, for backing up, all of those kind of things. And the second part is a blueprint. So a blueprint is really a paved path to production. This is a very simple way for a developer to say, I need an IAM role and an S3 bucket and some kind of compute to run my application. And the blueprint will help them get those set up correctly without them needing to become an expert in those technologies themselves. So that's it for the context. I'm really excited to show you what we've built at Resourcely with the demo.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? So let's go. Let's go.
So this is Resourcely. Resourcely makes it really easy for security folks to write guardrails that will prevent destructive actions and help developers select correct properties. It also makes it really easy for folks like platform engineers, infrastructure engineers to create blueprints that are going to be really easy, reusable patterns that will give their developers what they need. And finally, it makes it really easy for a developer that's busy, that just needs to go and create and manage cloud infrastructure to get that infrastructure set up well. So there's three main stakeholders that we address: the security, the platform team, and the developer. I'll show you what each of these sections are and how we can make life easier for them.
So everybody's using the same platform, right? So this is just like a one-stop shop for all of those people.
Exactly. Yep. But each person can only use the part of the platform that they need. For example, the security team often doesn't control the patterns at your organization. So what they really want to do is set boundaries. These are the kind of things that we care about, and we want to become involved anytime these types of changes are happening before they happen.
And I guess you don't want the developers being able to say, well, I don't like that guardrail, so I'm going to go to the security select section and just remove it, right? So
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So we have different user types all built in here. Developers can use the platform to create infrastructure. They can't go change your security policies. They can't go and edit your template so that it no longer meets your requirements.
All right.
So the first thing we'll look at here is guardrails. This is often where our security customers start. They want to define certain things that should require approval before they happen, or certain settings that they want to make sure are set on the infrastructure as developers are using it. So guardrails are written in the Resourcely language. We've created these to be very easy to read and write. It's basically, they're written in a language that's close to English. They can live in your code. They can be managed through GitOps and synced up to our platform through a Terraform provider.
And the properties could be something like, if you want to set a S3 bucket public, right? Like you might suggest that needs to be reviewed by someone. You can set a property like it must be encrypted, things like that, right? Like of the 70 different settings that an S3 bucket can have, you can start, selecting your own defaults, essentially.
Exactly. So there's shockingly high number of ways to make an S3 bucket public. We don't want our customers to have to know what those are. So we come with these default policies that cover all of them. For example, you can make an S3 bucket public via its ACL, via grants, and via a policy statement. We cover those out of the box in Guardrails, and to instantiate one, you can just press this button and create a guardrail. These are all also manageable in the product through this interface and through the Terraform provider. So for example, here's a bucket logging policy. You can go in and edit this, and we have really nice testing around this to make sure that it's doing exactly what you expect. So for example, this policy will generate an example for it. Here's this logging field, and we can go and evaluate, and it'll actually tell you whether your logging is fine or not. If you go and set something incorrect, so for example, you remove the logging, and then you evaluate it again, it now fails because you actually didn't attach the logging object correctly. So this is a way that you make sure that your policies are doing exactly what you think that they're going to do ahead of time.
Yeah. I can imagine too that was a lot of work to get that to work, right? You just show it in the demo and it's like, oh, that's cool. And it's like, yeah, countless hours of like making that work. But yeah, anyway.
you know why it's very difficult? So we need to evaluate these policies, as you're going to see, in two places. We actually want to suggest to the developer how they should configure infrastructure. So this is going to be collaborative with the user. And we also need to evaluate them in CI to make sure that nobody can edit your Terraform later and bypass your whole process. So we actually evaluate in two places. And that requires basically what we call transpile, like taking this language and converting it to something else. We would have preferred not to build this in the first place, but we heard regularly that things like Rego are very hard to write and manage. People aren't sure if they're doing what they're expected to be doing. And also for us to convert Rego into something that we can evaluate in the front end is very difficult. So
the reason I mentioned anything at all there is like sometimes you see like someone demonstrate something in 10 seconds and you just know that it was a lot of work to get that little part of the product to work. But anyway, go on.
Exactly. So next thing that you have these guardrails, we're going to run in CI. We're going to check and make sure that people, as they're writing Terraform, don't go and violate these policies. We're going to give you an early warning system. So the way I like to describe this is tripwires. If somebody's making a bucket public, you probably don't want to review every single Terraform change. But when somebody's doing that Terraform change, you do want to get involved because they might be doing something dangerous. And so Resourcely can function like that tripwire for you. It'll review every PR. You don't have to be in there. And it'll bring you in before something risky happens. So now let's go and create something for developers to use. And we'll actually run this end to end and show what the developer experience is like. So we have a basic RDS database. This is the kind of resource that your developers probably need to spin up a lot. You know, databases are one of the major cloud provider services that folks need to consume. And we want to make this dead simple for them. So what a blueprint really does is define what are user inputs and how do we tell them to fill in these inputs. And in Resourcely Blueprint, you can suggest values. For example, we're going to suggest by default 10 gigabytes of storage. You can also remove these inputs. Again, we come up with a lot of these out of the box, but folks are going to need to fine-tune these templates for their use case, and we make that experience easy. So on top of the blueprint, now we apply guardrails. We don't have any guardrails yet, so let's create a few of those, and we'll get back to Blueprint in a second. So we'll come in here. What do we care about for a database? These are all out-of-the-box policies. We probably care what engine are folks using. Maybe at our company, we only want them to use MySQL, for example. So I can quickly create this policy. And then we'll go here and we'll create a few more policies. So we're going to set, we want all of the data stored in RDS is encrypted at rest. We'll create that one as well. And then we'll come to here and we'll create another guardrail.
It's so funny that when you're demoing this, I mean, I've got a little bit of experience with the AWS console, and honestly, this is more what it should look like. It's just, I mean, it's just so funny that what you've done is you've essentially created a much better, you know, and I know it's not just AWS, but like, you know, this is what they should look like.
We've built this to be intuitive and easy. So the problem is security is often has developer customers, and they only have so much limited political capital to make developers' life harder. So if a developer comes and looks at Resourcely and says, this seems hard, I don't want to use it, we've already lost. What we want is security teams to be a great partner and offer this for developers, and developers say, great, this is way easier than what I was doing. So that North Star of beating the console is absolutely something we care about, and we've designed around from day one. Okay, so now we have some guardrails set up. Let's go and create a pattern. So we're going to create an RDS database here. We're going to suggest this value. We're going to remove this username option because we don't care about it. And now on top of this, we're applying these guardrails that we just created. So we're going to require that the engine be in this list, which only contains MySQL for now. We're actually going to add this property. So storage encrypted is not present in the blueprint at all. Oftentimes security want to go and set things, and they don't want to have to go and work so closely with engineering to make sure that the blueprints are all encompassing of security policies. So what's nice about this is the guardrails can come and contribute configuration that wasn't present in the first place. Same thing with this IAM database authentication. This is actually going to get added to the configuration we generate without the security team having to go and bake it into the blueprint. Now, one of the reasons that correct configuration becomes hard, companies are often forced to have these kind of blanket policies because the security engine doesn't have any context about what a developer is actually trying to do. So what you can do is introduce these questions that the developer knows the answer to, and you can use the answers to go and selectively apply policies. So for example, if somebody's creating a database, you might wonder what kind of data does it have? And this can be your company's data taxonomy. So basic, sensitive, PII. This is now a single select field, and you'll see it in a second. The user will actually supply this information and help the security team give them the right guidance for what they're trying to do. So here's the developer experience. We're going to supply this basic information. We're going to give this a name. This is an example of a guardrail with the engine. Remember, we limited it. At our company, we only want to use MySQL. So that's the only option that a developer can see. Now, policies are great, but if you have no exception process at all, this is when people start going off of your paved road and you don't find out about it. People have used some other Terraform configuration. It's not your module, and you're completely blind. What we've done is introduce a nice exception process in the actual developer flow. So a developer for any guardrail enforced property can say, I need an exception to this. And we'll tell them what the guardrail is. They can click this and find out why it exists. But basically, we're telling them early, if you pick this, it's going to require approval from the guardrail stakeholder. This is often security, but it could be folks like your cost management team, your SRE team, your infrastructure team. Those are folks that often care about properties of infrastructure. And the whole goal here is to help the developer know what those things are.
Yep.
So once you continue, now all of the options that the cloud provider offers are available. This is one of the things we've done to make this an easy developer experience. We don't want just text boxes where the user has to go look up in docs and find out what is the exact string that I have to jam in here to get it to work. So instead, we've created this nice drop-down list. And when we have a guardrail, we filter that list to what they actually should pick. So we'll pick one of these. Supply an engine version. Here's another example of the knowledge graph. So we know what all of the database instance types are. Developers don't have to go look that up in docs. And then here's a preview of the Terraform that they'll get. So what we've done here is actually synthesize the correct Terraform for what the developer's trying to do, their intent, their inputs against the template with added values. For example, these two fields didn't exist before. Guardrails went and added them. These are just things that security cares about that developers probably wouldn't know about or wouldn't understand how to set. And they didn't have to. They just got it for free.
Well, and I'm guessing most Terraform that you see, it's not written by infrastructure experts, right? It's written by developers who need to provision infrastructure, who need to spin it up to get it going, so that none of them are actually Terraform experts. And there are so many footguns. So, I mean, I'm just really enjoying the demo because, yeah, as you say, from a developer's perspective, they're like, great, I've got this thing that just generates the Terraform for me and also means that I won't get yelled at by the security people in 3 months when they find some misconfiguration. So, yeah, I can definitely see that for orgs that don't have like a whole team managing Terraform, like this would get them light years ahead of where they'd be otherwise.
Even for orgs that do have a whole team managing Terraform, those teams often don't want to be involved in kind of manual requests that are coming for basic Terraform. What
they're
like
looking for something like this where they
yeah.
can just configure it and and supervise it, and off they go. Yeah,
Exactly. So this is what blueprint authoring looks like. You can preview. The developer experience is always important, so we show what that looks like up front. And speaking of that, the next thing I'll show you is actually what that developer experience looks like. We want this to be blazing fast, the quickest and easiest way for a developer to get what they need. So the guardrails and Foundry, those don't exist for developers. What they're going to see is a screen like this, and they get this big blue button that will help them create a pull request for what they need. So let's say a developer needs an S3 bucket and an IAM role. That's a pretty common use case. So the role is going to allow access to the S3 bucket that they're creating. What we've done is add these to what we call the shopping cart. Shopping cart's like, I need this and this and this, and then you check out and you're done. And we've replicated that same experience for generating infrastructure. So they can continue. We're going to help them create a pull request. You can actually pre-fill the repos. Sometimes developers don't even know the standard of where to put these things, and they shouldn't have to. So anything we can do to reduce that cognitive load is a win for us, and it's a win for developers. Config root is how we integrate into customers' different environments. I'm not going to go into that here, but it's basically whether you have a mono repo or a bunch of repos with their own standards, we can fit into that. Okay, so we're making two things. We're making a bucket, and we're making the IAM role with its policy. You'll see locks on both these fields. So the reason bucket has a name on it, we're creating a name, and we have a naming convention here. So if I name something incorrectly, we want ours to start with resourcely something, and we're going to give the user feedback, hey, it needs to meet this pattern. So if I actually now go ahead and fix this, I can continue. And again, any of these things that if somebody actually had a valid exception, they can click this lock and request an exception, and that's all going to happen in the Git process.
Yep.
Again, so we're only showing versioning configured enabled per the guardrail. If somebody needed something else, they can click this. They can go and pick one of these. I'll pick one so I show you what happens when you actually violate a policy. We pre-fill as much of this as possible. So IAM is extremely complex, and my vision is no developer ever has to understand like the complexities of IAM. I've had to go.
Well, that's
go through
good
that
because
myself.
very few of them actually do, Travis. So it seems like a good goal. Yeah, and I'm not throwing shade at developers there. It's just like this whole other thing that's very complex that they only really need to think about when they're doing something like this, right? So they're not naturally going to be geared towards becoming IAM experts.
Yeah, if developers had to do this a lot, they'd become great at it too, just the way everybody else that had to become good at it. But they shouldn't have to. You really want them building your company's products.
No, 100%.
So instead of IAM actions, there's thousands of these things. What we've created are presets, and this is something available in the product where you can create these nice groupings. So if I pick S3 read, it's going to give me the right actions to actually allow me to do that. I know I need S3 read. I don't want to go look at the IAM docs and come up with the exact action set there. We're going to allow it, and one of the things we've done to make this nice with the shopping cart is we can actually link to this bucket that we already created. This is actually it's not just referencing it by name, it's actually going to link these Terraform resources together so that if the bucket or the role ever change, they're still linked up together. So that's it. That's all I needed to do as a dev. We will show them the Terraform that they're about to generate. They can preview this, make sure it's good. They can do edits in line here. But most folks just press this button and open a pull request. So resourcely bucket plus IAM role. We'll open the pull request here. And this is where we connect into our customer's GitHub or GitLab. We're actually doing this on behalf of the developer with their own permissions. So if you have restrictions on what repos the developer can get to, we're going to honor and respect those.
So that's part of the multi-user component of your product, is that it will actually respect their privileges elsewhere as well. That would have been also quite a lot of work, Travis.
Yeah, so we are not using our access control for this. We're using the developer's own GitHub access control. So whatever permissions to repos they have, we're going to use the same permissions here because it's actually doing it on behalf of the developers.
Yeah.
Okay, we've opened a pull request, so we can go and view that. We're going to evaluate it against the plan, and then as soon as the plan's available, we're going to run guardrails. And so guardrails are now running, and in a second, it's going to tell us that we've messed something up, because if you remember, we've actually requested an exception for one of the properties. So resourcely guardrails have run, and we have failures. And if you go into the checks here, you can actually see what ran. So we wanted the S3 bucket encrypted at rest. It wasn't done. And then we also wanted this versioning enabled here. And so going back to what was actually checked in, we can show these failures in line so developers know what to actually fix here, like where the actual violation is. And the other part where this is useful is somebody that's coming to review this knows exactly what it is they need to look at. Like, why were they brought into CI? And over here, we've actually now added a reviewer that wasn't there in the previous case, which is the SecOps team. In this case, they're the owner of the guardrail. You can define those yourself. But the SecOps team is going to get looped in by Resourcely. They didn't have to watch all of the PRs. They got brought in at the right time before something that went against their policies is happening.
Yeah, right. So before this goes anywhere, it pulls the people in to fix it.
Exactly. Yep.
Yep.
So one final thing I wanted to show you. A lot of our customers have they already care about this problem. They've already created this nice catalog of modules, and the last thing we want to ask them to do is throw away those modules. There's great use cases for modules, and so we've built Resourcely to actually import your modules as blueprints in Resourcely. So to do that, you come here, you create a blueprint, you import a module from its source. This is going to be a public repo, but private repos work as well. And so I'll import this IAM account module. And so what we've done here, we've used the native HCL parser that comes with Terraform, and we've analyzed the module, and we can see all of its inputs, and then how those inputs flow through the module code to become resource outputs. So we have all the defaults, the descriptions that came with the modules. In this case, there's 12. Sometimes we've seen like 80 of these. So what folks will often want to do is say, all right, we're not going to ask the user for 80 things. We're going to go and add a few of these back. So we'll add get caller identity, max password age, and min password length. To make this even easier, you can go and group these things up. So we'll do a basic group here, and we'll do a security group. And then we'll start adding these things to the right sections.
Can you have things pop up in these imported modules that are kind of against policy, like guardrails wise? Is that something that happens?
Exactly, yeah. So because we know that input ultimately becomes a resource output that we have a guardrail about, we can show that guardrail up front. So the user will have to go and request an exception.
I'd imagine with like a new customer with a lot of Terraform modules, the first thing they do is import this stuff. Then they start applying guardrails and see where it turns red, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. They see where it turns red. And the other thing is although folks have module catalogs, it's actually like pretty painful to build and maintain these things. So folks will often start getting excited about the Resourcely blueprints, which allow them, templates that have guardrails on it. You're not just going to square one and letting people do whatever, but you can move much more quickly than you can with a module.
Well, and you're going to find problems in stuff that you've already deployed as well that maybe hasn't shown up in your CSPM, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that thing you just mentioned is what we're building now. So that's called campaigns. We're looking for design partners for it right now. And what it'll do is run the guardrails against your at-rest configuration and find any drifts that you have from that configuration with the guardrail. And we'll actually help you create pull requests to go and fix those things and show the progress of it over time. So let's say that your bucket versioning was disabled, and we know that it can't be disabled, but enabled or suspended is fine. You can't just go in AI and like auto set the field because we don't know what it should have been. We just know that it couldn't have been what it is. And so in that case, we show that same interface with the dropdown with the allowed options and actually assist the user in creating the change that they need to create and then making a pull request. Our bet is that if it's very simple and fast for a developer to do these things, that they'll actually do the remediation and these things will get fixed at rest.
Well,
if it's like,
it's a
go
matter
figure out
of-
how to write Terraform to fix it.
Yeah. If it's a matter of logging in and, clicking on a few drop downs to make it like go green, then why not, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Fast and easy. The other thing too, because we know what these properties are and we have them in the knowledge graph, some changes, for example, if you rename a bucket in Terraform, that will destroy your bucket and create a new bucket with the new name. So that's a destructive action. And oftentimes folks just don't even know this is going to happen. We actually have that in the knowledge graph, though, encoded what are the destructive actions on these properties. So we can give developers hey, slow down here. This is going to cause you a bad day if you don't take care with it.
Yeah, I can think of like my equivalent as, when I was doing radio 20 years ago was using mini disc recorders. I don't know if you remember them, but I think if you changed the audio file format, it would actually nuke what was already on the disc. And that's a lesson that you would learn pretty quick. Yeah, so foot guns everywhere.
You only have to learn that one time.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
We want to make people not have to learn it at any times. We just tell them when it's unsafe. I'll finish configuring the modules, show you how fast and easy this is. Now we've created this configuration. This can live in your repo. Again, you can preview the developer experience, see what your developers will actually see here, change things around, and then this can live, your blueprint can live in your code, and you can keep it synced up to our platform through the Terraform provider.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. I mean, it's funny because I've been talking to you about this product, for what, like a year and a half or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be able to see it, like it definitely demos well, right? And just as I say, I mean, I'm not an admin. I'm not running infrastructure as code or anything. But as I say, I've had experience with things just like the AWS console. And it's just so awful that, you just sort of think, I mean, I know this is for Terraform, this is for everything, but I just think, if it was an option just to manage your AWS through an interface like this, like that would be just a beautiful thing, right? I'm not holding my breath. Travis McPeak, thank you so much for joining us to actually walk us through that. That was a great demo, really interesting stuff, and we'll be chatting to you on the podcast again soon.
Thank you for the opportunity.